everyone. I am here introducing today my really good friend Mazen Zeidan, who is a fashion photographer and boudoir. He also does a lot of really incredible portrait photography. He's been in the industry for so many years, ridiculous amount. Also has been a lead photographer for the Vancouver Fashion Week, which is really cool, many years in a row. Made his way up to the lead photographer there. And teaches on the side. He's worked with Sony. He's just all around really, really well-versed. And
thank you for
yeah.
that.
So, Mazen.
Yes.
Welcome.
Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
When did we meet each other?
Oh, God. That must have been 2016?
Arrival Music Festival.
Yeah. It's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't believe it's 2025 right now. Wow.
Yeah, that's really crazy.
Yeah.
And so was I DJing at the festival?
You were DJing.
And you...
Yeah, so
we met after or beforehand?
No, I met you basically right after your set.
Okay.
Like, I was so blown away by it. I was passed out in my tent, and then I literally started hearing you play, and I like rose up like a vampire from from a coffin. I was like, what is that right now? And I rushed to see what was happening. And I actually was shooting that festival just casually, like I wasn't officially doing it, but I wanted to build a portfolio for festival stuff. So I was shooting a bunch of festivals that year just casually, and I think I took some shots of you. I'm not sure if I remember that. God, that's how long ago it was. But yeah, I just heard your set and I was like, oh my God, amazing. And then, I think I met like 3 DJs that I'm friends with. They all played it in a row. It was you, and then it was Jordan Gill, and then Jessica Southern, or Jessu as people know her. And all 3 in a row, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Such good music that most of you guys were playing like progressive or, deep house, sort of combination of the two. And everybody else is playing tech house and, other noisy music.
We were a bit different.
Yeah.
basically.
So for me, I was just like, yes.
That's awesome.
So that's how we met.
That's so cool. I'm so glad we met because the rest is history.
Yeah, for sure.
We've done a lot of work since.
Yeah,
together, which is really cool.
Yeah.
What got you like into photography in the first place? Like, because you're so committed to that, like it's pretty much taken over your life in a way.
Yeah, it has.
In a beautiful way.
Yeah, absolutely. I was very much interested in photography since high school, especially, I was a little bit before high school, but especially in high school, we could take a photography course. And this is a long time ago, so you're talking about like, this is all film photography. So they had like a photography department where you could use their cameras there, and a dark room, and you can use film, and it was all black and white and stuff at the time, but not that that was the only thing that was available. It's not that long ago. It's just our school was poor, so we had just black and white photography. So I really dove into it there, and really just was capturing what I saw, and learning composition and, how light interacts with things, and just kind of like mastering seeing and putting that on the camera. And I just kept carrying that on into when I was younger, but after high school, I got into digital photography at that point. This is like the early 2000s, and they weren't like full SLR cameras. They were like kind of like pocket cameras, but like that was about the best you could get for digital at the time because they hadn't really invented SLRs. And I did a lot of car photography at car shows. So that's what I was into at the time. I had bought a sports car, and I was in the car scene, and I was doing a lot of that just for fun, but really just dove into that too, as well as I still had my camera for shooting film stuff. And I would take my film camera to race courses and car shows, and I would shoot film still there, but not as much because it's more expensive to develop. You take your 12 shots, and then you have to spend like $20 to print it out and develop it and whatever. Digital, you just keep shooting and throw it on your computer. So, fast forward to like the mid 2000s or so, a buddy of mine who's also a hobbyist photographer got me interested in taking a studio photography course. So learning how to use studio lighting or external lighting, and it was in 2 parts. It was like still life, which is like objects and things, and then shooting portraits of people. And I was really fascinated by that because I've always wanted to shoot, models and stuff like that. And I was always big into fashion. When I was younger, I used to watch the Fashion Network and stuff like that. So I was always interested in it, but I never got into it. I didn't know how to, but so I took this course, and once we got to the part where we're shooting portraits, I was absolutely like something, that light bulb that clicks in your head where in the cartoons where it's like, oh, this is it. Like the light bulb went on, and I just fell so in love with the concept. I was so nervous the first time I shot with the model. That I asked like the stupid, she's like, what do I do? I was like, pose like they do in the magazines. It's like so stupid. It's like, oh my God, I'm still embarrassed about it. But like that experience was so embarrassing that it forced me to like really focus on, okay, if I'm going to be working with a actual human being, what do I need to do to interact with this person? And that got me into renting my own studio with getting some basic lighting and just literally Craigslist ad, come and shoot with me for free. We'll both learn together. And, I shot like a bunch of people, like I think 30, 40 people in like a few months, like just banging it out. And there's a lot of junk, but like I was learning how to use the lighting, learning how to interact with people. And then we had this one model who was brand new, but she came in and we had great chemistry. She was beautiful. And then we actually had some really good shots and I put them out there and that started the whole ball rolling. Like people were like, whoa, he's actually good. And then like, I got offers from a lot of people that I looked up to shoot with them. And
Mm,
that turned into more projects. And then, my work started getting out there and that was basically things exploded from there. And, I've been doing it since then kind of nonstop. So
nice.
yeah.
Nice. Taking back to the moment that you realized that photography was your thing and you
Hmm.
wanted to go into it, was there like a specific like feeling or very like a moment or like even what is that line? I don't know what movie it's from, but it's like it's all in the eyes. Like was it
Hmm.
like the connection between the eyes and like an actual human that was like the interaction or what was that like did you ever figure out exactly what it was about?
I think it's mainly photography before shooting with people was about seeing something and getting your interpretation of it. So it's part documentation, part artistic vision. When you work with people, now it's a collaborative process, and that collaborative process was very interesting to me because, I guess you could say I'm a fairly social person, even though I'm more introverted than people think, but I do like interacting with people, especially one on one or like in small groups.
Mhm.
And the main thing was that it was this collaborative process to create this thing much greater than you could just by capturing moments.
Right.
You can actually take a an idea and make it come to fruition with the right set, the right person, the stylist, and your vision and creativity with lighting and how you see the scene and the angles and stuff like that. What lenses you use and what situations. It's so much more comprehensive and it's like you can make a lot of decisions on how that's going to look before you get there
Mm.
and also work on the fly.
Mhm.
And when you're just capturing things, you kind of have like, okay, well, I have this lens, this is how I see these things with this lens, and I can maybe switch lenses, but sometimes if you're shooting on the fly, switching lenses, you lose the moment, right?
Right.
I mean, it depends on what you're doing, like I've also shot landscape and landscape's also very deliberate, but it's also you're at the mercy of the sun, the lighting of the situation, the
Mhm.
clouds, the weather. You could be in a moment where you're like, okay, I want to capture this moment. And then like clouds come and it ruins the scene. And it's like, okay, well, I guess I got to come back next tomorrow and try the sunset again or the sunrise again or whatever. There's a lot of complicated things with waiting for the environment to work for you. Whereas like with portrait and studio or like even, portraits outdoors, if you have your own lighting, you can control a lot of things and make things look like they don't look in real life or make them look like they're natural. It's a lot more there's a lot more range of what you can do as long as you know how to do it, right?
For sure.
And just that whole working with a person and coming together to create an idea and like you both are like, oh, check this out, and it's like, oh my god, this is crazy, and then like you like vibe off of each other and then you go and do more and you get more inspired. It's just like
Yeah.
in the moment it's just so you know, it's adrenaline, it's satisfaction, it's dopamine, it's all the things, and it's like um, that just every time I do it, especially when I'm on set actually shooting, is like the best thing ever.
Mhm.
All the stuff around it, like editing and meeting up and coordinating and all that stuff, and sometimes working with flaky people and all that crap.
Yeah.
It's there's parts of any business to the business side of it's too kind of like tedious. I don't love doing that stuff, but when I've got a camera on a set and I've got my gear, my lighting, and we're ready to go, there's nothing better, like
Totally.
that's like, it's like driving a race car or, having sex, or it's that good, like it's just perfect little storm of thing you can do.
For sure.
Yeah. And for me, like I would say I have a very good sense for beauty. I'm not as creative as I'd like to be. I'd say I'm like maybe 9 out of 10 vision, but 6 or 7 out of 10 creativity. But like
Mhm.
when you work with other people, you can see something one way and then they see something another way, and you can be like, oh yeah, that's awesome. I didn't think of that, and like,
You can
the more
bounce
people
off.
you have, yeah, you can get more ideas,
Right.
and that allowed my ability to create something better than I could before just snapping shots. Um, it just made that much more possible. And I, I still haven't gotten tired of it. Like, I guess it's been almost 20 years now of
Found your
doing.
dharma.
Yeah, exactly.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to ask slightly different topic,
Sure.
more into like the boudoir photography
Mm-hmm.
and also linking it to the experience that I've had with you
Mm-hmm.
behind the camera as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you're somebody, actually you're probably one of the very few men in my life that have made me feel so comfortable behind a camera
Mm-hmm.
and also just in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like whenever we are hanging out or whether we're at a festival or whatever, like I feel so comfortable in my femininity with you, knowing
Mm-hmm.
that you are it's never going to be weird. It's like it's just so natural.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering like as a photographer, how if you're if that's because of your mindset and approaching women in that are going to be your subject, or if
Mm-hmm.
you have some like kind of rules you go by or whatever, so that like even males that are interested in your path as well, like
Mm-hmm.
who also want, people to feel comfortable. You're
Mm-hmm.
just a really good example of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just wondering if there's anything like kind of that, any just like rules that you go by when you're shooting with women and just like how you make them feel so comfortable.
Sure. Especially since I've been younger, I've always had a lot of female friends.
Hmm.
And I think there's something about the female energy that I feed off of. And I've always enjoyed having women around me, and guys too. Like I have a lot of great guy friends, but I think I have more female friends than most guys do. I'd say, unless they're gay. Most guys don't have as many close female friends that I do. And the main thing that I do is I treat them as a friend. So if I would help a guy friend do a thing, would I help the girlfriend do a thing? Would I treat a girl differently than my guy friends? And I don't.
Mhm.
And that's the thing, is I think women are so used to being treated differently by men because that's usually their MO, is that they're trying to get something out of them.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And for me, when I'm like interested in a girl, I'm try to be as clear about that as I can. But when I'm not, I'm not just trying to get like, side action or whatever. And I think that carried very well into photography because, when you have a girl, especially somebody you're working with that's new, or even when I was in fashion, when they're much younger as well, there's a lot of vulnerability there. And it's very difficult for them to come out of their guard if they feel like you're, looking at them some sort of way. So I've always been used to treating women just as regular people, as they are, because they're regular people. We're all screwed up, in our own ways.
We're
So,
all human,
they're, you can't pedestalize them or see them as something that you need to get something out of, all the time. A lot of people do that. So, I think that for me, especially when I'm on set, it's very much like, this is like, not to objectify a woman, but like at this point, you are part of a scene.
Yes.
You are a thing
Mhm.
that I am capturing. So, I'm not looking at you as like some object of desire or whatever. And, and my ability to just treat women like they're regular people, even if I'm attracted to them, you just treat them like a regular person and they'll treat you like a regular person. And it's like, wow, this is a person that's got all these layers of, complexity and needs and wants and all that stuff. And, you can benefit from just their interaction, right? So,
Of course.
I mean, that's always been kind of how I've been since I was younger,
Mhm.
and I think, I mean, I don't know if that has anything to do with the fact that I grew up with a mom and a sister, so I've always been around women. But I think a lot of people are like that and they still don't act that way. So, um, yeah, I mean, that's basically it. It's always
Nice.
been something that I've done. And I think it's reflected in the fact that my reputation is sterling, throughout the city, as far as like anybody I've ever worked with has never gotten any bad vibes or accused me of doing anything that might even seem remotely, untowards. And I work with women who are naked all the time, literally all the time,
Mhm.
and it's just not an issue. It's no problem.
Yeah. What makes a good photo? Like, qualities.
hmm
1, 2, 3 of your, like, top, you
Well,
know
there's actually really only one, So the main thing that makes a good photo is how long somebody looks at it. So, like, if you're scrolling or like looking at a bunch of photos in a book, if you stop and look at it, that's a good photo.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter if what made it that way. Could be the composition, could be the lighting, could even be the subject. Even if it's like a really poorly composed photo, but like something crazy is happening in it, that's a good photo. It's really the one thing that makes a photo good. It's really the only definition of it is how long you look at it.
Mm.
If you look at it for more than like 5 seconds, then that's a good photo. If you're looking at it for like a minute, then it's a great photo. If you're looking at it for several minutes, it's a masterpiece. You know what I
Of
mean?
course.
So, and that's I think the way it is with any art. It's visual art. Is like if somebody is captured by it, then you've succeeded.
For sure.
It doesn't matter how you got there.
Yeah.
And photography, there's a lot of rules in photography as far as like composition, and like there's the leading lines and rule of thirds and all these blah blah blah. Like if you these are all photography 101 things people could look up. And if you're a new photographer, you should stick to those rules until you're very comfortable with them and it becomes automatic. And then once you develop a vision of what you want to like a story that you want to tell with the photo, feel free to break them, right? But you need to master the rules before you could break the rules. I think that's very common in a lot of things, but it's the rules are there to get you in the right direction. If you take a photo like a photo of a portrait of a person's head and their head is in the center of the photo, it's ridiculous,
Mm.
and you can look at it and feel like it's ridiculous. Like what is the rest of the frame doing? It
Yes.
doesn't need to be there. And that's another thing that you need to do. Another rule that people need to think about with photography is remove things that don't tell the story of what you're trying to say. And that's same thing for documenting photography or portrait or anything else.
Mhm.
A famous blogger photographer by the name of Ken Rockwell said, painting is the art of adding and photography is the art of subtracting. And it's so true. It's like whatever doesn't need to be in the photo, get it out of the photo, and that's basically one of the main things that I look at is like what doesn't need to be here and what story is this telling. And
Keeping it just
if
to the
if if I
essentials.
want to look at this photo for more than 5 seconds after I've spent hours editing it, then it's good,
Yeah.
you know?
Changing directions a little bit.
Mhm.
What are some things to not forget in a photo shoot, like to bring
Mhm.
or to consider? And do you have any like little hacks, basically things that maybe you've done um, that have just worked for you? Basically, for example, replacing a $3,000 light with a flashlight, and you found out that it worked just the same.
Yeah.
Things like that, little tricks that you can just, you know, things you've discovered.
It's funny. It's not really a hack because a good photographer or a veteran photographer will already know how to use this, but like neutral density filters,
Mm.
major key, especially in harsh lighting or when you're working with cameras that don't have a lot of dynamic range or camera equipment that doesn't have a lot of like high ISO capability. Um, you know, neutral density filters and reflectors can go a long way outside in the sun, and um, that's just, I mean, I could spend an hour telling you how that all works, but like, that's one thing is that people don't use neutral density filters anymore because the cameras are so capable now. But like, if you're just starting out and you're spending like, $2,000 on your kit, which is not a lot of amount. I'm sorry to tell people that's not a lot of money for photography. Photography is a very expensive hobby. But like neutral density filters are cheap, reflectors are cheap, and you can do a lot of damage with that, and Even an onboard flash, like a hot shoe flash in direct sunlight is, once you master the balancing of that so it doesn't look weird and fake, you can do a lot of good work with that. And that's like a cheap way to accomplish really high end results is those three things and a combination of them all. I mean, there's as far as things to forget, I have ADHD. I forget shit all the time. It's just really bad. But I try to prep the day before, get all your batteries charged, get all your memory cards formatted. Do that before you get there. If you can remember to do that before you get there, then you're not wasting time doing it there or like, oh shoot, I have no battery. I've done all these things before. So, it's you learn the hard way. But yeah, those just simple things like charge your batteries, make sure your lenses are clean beforehand, make sure your sensors are clean beforehand, make sure your memory cards are found and wiped and ready to go beforehand. Do this all beforehand so you're not like scrambling the day
Hmm.
of. That's kind of the thing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I had a question that just popped into my head randomly
Sure.
that wasn't even part of anything. Um, when you're reaching out to models
Hmm.
or people that you want to connect with or you see potential in shooting,
Hmm.
how do you do it in a way that like what is the communication like or the conversation? How does that go so it's like very clean and professional?
That's a very good question because I don't think there's one way that I do it. When I'm approaching somebody I want to work with just creatively, it's, most of the times it's in person. I'll see somebody in person. I find that talking to somebody you don't know on social media almost gets you nowhere usually. It's sometimes it just goes into the requests and nobody sees it in Instagram specifically. Back in the days with when it was mostly Facebook specific, which is where I got started, Facebook, if you're friends with somebody, you can send them a message, they'll get it, and I would I think you build a relationship through interacting with them first, and then you can approach them, and it makes more sense.
Mhm.
But usually, most people I work with creatively, I usually see them in person, and then I have my photos on my phone because you can't show anything on Instagram. There's as far as like censored versions of the work and stuff like that. So and plus it's on a small screen, and the quality is compressed and all that stuff. So I like having the real thing on my phone. I usually have phones with big screens so they can see better, and then like that's a better way to just like show them that hey, this is what I can do. And if they're comfortable with that, then by all means they'll work with you. So and it's hard. Sometimes you can be intimidated by wanting to approach someone. I think that's the case for everybody in any situation. But, ultimately, I've never had a really bad interaction. There have been times when, like, they say they're interested and then they flake out and it's fine. You're like, okay, I guess they weren't really interested or they're not serious. And it's fine. It happens all the time. Um, but yeah, just I say be ready with what you have to show them why you have to offer value. That's really what it is like, here's what I can offer, and if that is enough, then, by all means, go ahead. They'll go ahead with you. When I was beginning, I didn't have a portfolio. It was all about like, hey, we have the studio space. This is free. If you're just learning, you know, we'll give you photos, and that was it. It's like, so I was working with a lot of people that really, didn't have a future in modeling or maybe were just starting or didn't know how to pose or didn't know how to feel comfortable in front of a camera. I was offering them, we're both learning, let's figure this out together. here's your Here's what we can do, and some of it turned into stuff that they can use on social media and some of it didn't. It's just whatever, it was whatever. But at the end of the day, you're offering value, and what your value proposition is what how much quality of person you'll be able to work with.
Right.
You have to start at the bottom. I got lucky with that one model that I worked with. Was she was just starting and hadn't been discovered yet, and she just happened to see that ad, and she came into my studio and I was there, and I didn't screw it up.
Mhm.
So that's kind of just how sometimes opportunities work, is like you're running through the numbers and then you hit one that's good and boom, off
For
it
sure.
takes off, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Cool.
Mhm.
What is um what is your favorite photo shoot that you've ever done to date? And also,
Mm.
what is the riskiest thing that you've ever done to get the perfect shot?
Hmm. It's a good question. I haven't thought about this actually. Um, I don't know if I can say I have a favorite photo shoot. Um, there's a lot of great ones. Uh, it's tough to say. Sometimes I think when you travel and you can shoot at lovely locations, that's a lot of fun. Vancouver's kind of like there's such a short window of when the weather is good, and there's so many restrictions with where you can go, and it's like ultimately the city is not necessarily built to be aesthetically pleasing. If you go to a place like the extreme opposite version of that is Tulum, where it's like there's very little regard for anything but the aesthetic, and you can literally walk everywhere and there's a beautiful place to take a photo.
Right. Yeah.
It's a very photogenic place, whereas Vancouver is not necessarily built to be photogenic. There's photogenic spots for sure, and there's aspects to that, but it's not as built for that. So I think traveling to beautiful locations, like locations, the hardest part of photography for me is finding interesting places to shoot that are beautiful, that are available,
Mhm.
um, accessible. It's that's the biggest challenge that I've always had is location. And what was the other
What
question?
is the riskiest thing that
Oh
you've
yeah.
done to get the perfect shot? Has there
So
anything been
me and a girl that we were dating at the time went on a hike in Ucluelet slash Tofino, and it's to the plane crash. And I wish I brought like one more lens and a flash, but we just came with a bare bones thing of equipment and we went to the plane crash. And it's a very busy spot. And I wanted to do nude photography there. So we happened to get there and people were leaving and we didn't see anybody behind us. So we're like, let's go for it. And we shot for like, I think 10 or 15 minutes and then wrapped it back up. And then just as she was getting dressed again, people started coming up and it was like that short of a window. Like we just hit that exact right spot.
the universe just let you that little
Yeah,
pocket of time for
exactly.
creativity?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's was quite a difficult hike, especially getting that last step up to where the plane was. It's like, it was muddy, slippery, and very precarious to get up there. I don't think they actually even want people to go up to the plane,
Mhm.
technically speaking. So they don't make it easy. But we did it, and that's the last one I can remember. Otherwise, I mean, there's always challenges at different shoot locations and stuff like that, and you have to kind of like. I mean, I remember working at the rocky cliffs near Lighthouse Park, and I was like dangling trying to get the shot, and I actually my camera slipped and it was on a thing, but it came and slipped and hit one of the rocks, and one my lenses broke that day, and I was like, well, there goes $2,000, like just trying to get that shot. So
Mhm.
stuff like that happens.
Right.
But the mantra is anything for the shot, right? So
Pay to play.
yeah, you got to pay to play.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 Speaking of lenses, is there one lens that you, like, absolutely cannot live without? Just to yeah.
Yeah. So the one I use the most right now is an 85 1.2, 1.4, 1.4, 1.4. And because it's mainly a portrait, that's a portrait focal length, and it's just meant as a portrait lens. I use it for most of what I shoot. Well, my dream lens was always to own a 70 to 200 zoom lens, a professional f2.8 lens,
Mhm.
and then I bought one and I hardly ever use it. So it was just like I do use it at times, but it's like I thought it would be like the lens I use all the time, and I probably use it 15% of the time. It's not that much, especially considering it was a $4,000 investment. So it's like kind of disappointing, but
So the one you use the most essentially is gonna
yeah,
be
is that one, and it's not a cheap lens. I think it's $2,200. So it's not cheap, but it's definitely is in the photography scope. It's pretty average for like professional quality lenses.
right.
Yeah.
Right. But it works.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's the go-to. Everybody who's a portrait photographer wants that lens. It's pretty standard issue.
Amazing.
Yeah, and when I was cutting my teeth early in it, I had my camera was a crop sensor camera, so like the lens that I used all the time was a 50 mil 1.2L Canon lens, which is a famous lens from back then, and it has a pretty similar crop field of view as the 85 does on a full frame sensor, which is what I use now. So that's always been like the range that I work in predominantly.
Cool,
Yeah.
cool, nice. Is there anything else that just comes to mind that you want to share, either for new photographers or just literally anything?
Um, Not necessarily. I mean, it's a really crazy time to want to be a photographer right now. Um, there's always going to be a market for people wanting to have their photo taken. There's always going to there's always going to be a market for people wanting to have their photo taken, but like I think F's sake.
You got a
I
fly in the
think
room.
there's the industry at the top end, which is the commercial photography, the commercial for fuck's sake, the commercial photography world is going to probably be obsolete with AI the way things are going. So I
Interesting.
think a lot of people can create a lot of great art with AI. Like if you want to shoot photography as an artist, AI is a tool that you can use to help you create the vision that you, even the wildest visions, or even make simple things that you want to do easier to do. Like even my editing now with the way Photoshop is and some of the tools that are integrated into it, it's speeding up my workflow. Uh, Incrementally every few weeks there's a new thing that comes out, or every month there's like a new thing that comes out, it seems like, and that's like helps speed along the workflow a little bit, which is great because I don't love editing. I love the final product, but I don't love editing. So I think that if you want to be an artist, there's no better time to be a photographer. If you want to make money, that's another story. You can always, there's always like the, if you want to be like a successful photographer, as in like somebody who makes a living doing it, there's again, weddings, events, things that people want to have shot, documented. There's always going to be a market for that. I think there's never going to be a time that doesn't exist. But like, if you want to be a commercial advertising photographer, probably dead industry.
Interesting.
That probably is already now, if not mostly out the window.
Mhm.
And that's where you're like making real big money. Like if you want to be a rich photographer, that's where you want to be. And I'm not saying it's impossible. If your art is so great, whether you use AI tools or not, if you have that artistic vision as an artist, maybe you'll get hired by these companies to create something that's of your vision. That's going to be the 1% of the 1%, but that will exist. But just like creating catalogs for H&M or whatever, they're already using AI for that,
For sure.
So it's like that part of the industry I think is going to be pretty much wiped out. But
So
if you want to be
interesting.
an artist and you're not afraid to use all the tools at your disposal to create something very unique, it's no better time.
Anything is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for coming in.
Yeah.
Super fun conversation as always.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
And yeah, keep shooting away. You do
Yeah.
amazing work. So
Awesome. Thank you.
yeah.
All right.
All right.